Okay, so last week we talked about David getting made king, and then he ends up going and being a soother for Saul because Saul's gone a little crazy. And now we're getting into the story that we all grew up with in Sunday school about David and Goliath. Tell me what you were taught as a kid about the David and Goliath story.
He killed a giant with a rock.
Pardon me?
He killed a giant with a rock.
Killed a giant with a rock. Killed a giant with a rock. That's the 6-word conclusion of this. If you like to read, there's a book by somebody called Five Smooth Stones. One that writes a lot of those Christian books. Can't think of his name right now. But it gives a little more into the story. We know that, and yet there's so much more to the story. So we're going to kind of walk through it tonight and look at a little bit and see the fact. I praise God that, like you, I was taught a lot of this stuff as a child. But until I became an adult and started reading the rest of the story, there's so much more to it. Layers and layers and layers. Let's look at the 17th chapter of 1 Samuel. I'm going to read a little bit, and we may talk, and then we'll go a little longer. I'm going to read verses 1 to 7, and I'll do this in the NIV. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Socoh in Judah. They pitched camp at all these places between there and there. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. Don't you love how they set the picture? There's people over here, there's people over here, and the valley between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. He was over 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. I told you last week they think that javelin was between 25 and 30 feet long. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels, or about, I think it was about 20 pounds. His shield bearer went ahead of him. I think that's funny because he's got all this other, now he can't even carry his own shield, but he's got somebody who's going out ahead of him. There's a reason the writer goes into telling us all this detail about Goliath. You get a picture, don't you? You get a picture. Think about, they used to have wrestling here in Roanoke. I don't know if you remember that. And there used to be this one guy called Haystack Calhoun. And he was a big old guy. Well, Goliath would have looked even huge beside him. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come up and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, or are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he's able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and servants." Then the Philistines said, this day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight one another. On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Saul is the king of Israel. He theoretically was chosen by God and is still God's representative to this nation. And this one big guy is shouting at them. And how does Saul react? Terrified. Not just worried, not just concerned, scared to pieces. And if the leader's scared to pieces, how do you reckon the rest of the army's going to be? Scared. Someone like to read verses 32 to 35, through 35. And you can skip the big words.
David said to Saul, "Let no one's heart fail because."
No, wait a minute, verse 12, honey.
Oh, I thought you said 32.
I'm sorry, I may have 12 to 15.
I see.
Read my mind.
All right, 12 through what?
15.
Now David was the son of Bethlehem in Judah, named Jesse, who had 8 sons. And in the days of Saul, the man was already old and advanced in years. The 3 elder sons of Jesse had followed Saul to the battle. The names of his 3 sons who went to the battle were Eli, the firstborn, and next to him
upping
Not
it down.
bad. The record. Shammah. David was the youngest. The three elders followed Saul. But David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem.
Okay, now remember, why is he going back and forth to Saul? When Saul would get all weirded out, they'd call him to come play his harp for him. And he's back and forth then, and he's taking care of the farm because the three oldest boys have gone out to fight in the army. And it's interesting you mentioned here that Saul was old. You don't get a lot of easy time frame in this story, but at this point it says that Saul is old. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. 40 days, that guy would come out and make his taunts and challenge. I kind of wonder why after 40 days they kept being so scared. I mean, it was scary, but you know, after a while you can get kind of numb to something like that. So Jesse says, come on, take some of this food to your brothers, hurry up to their camp, take these cheeses to the commander, see how your fathers are with Saul and the men in Israel, and how they're fighting against the Philistines. How are they fighting against the Philistines? They aren't. They aren't. Here's the Philistines up here being happy, saying, go get them, God. And here's the Israelites over here going, oh my gosh, we're scared. Verse 20, early in the morning, David left the flock with a shepherd, loaded up and set out as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. So they still go out and make noise. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and ran to the battle lines and greeted his brother. As he was talking to them, Goliath, the Philistine champion, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. David heard it. When the Israelites saw the man, they all ran. Not just stand there and be scared. They're running from this guy. Even though Saul was the king, who was supposed to be in charge of the nation of Israel? God. Jehovah. Jehovah's supposed to be their commander-in-chief, if you will. The Israelites say, don't you see how he keeps coming out here? The king will give great wealth to the person who kills him, and also give him his daughter in marriage and exempt his family from taxes to Israel. Hallelujah. Now, I wonder which is better. Great riches, his daughter as a wife, or no more taxes. David asked the people standing there, the guys, what will be done for the man who kills? And they tell him this, repeated to him. So then David's oldest brother heard him speaking to the people, and he burned with anger at him. Why have you come down here? With whom do you leave those few sheep in the desert? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down here only to watch the battle. See a little sibling rivalry again, just like with Joseph, multi-generational. Who's taking care of the few sheep we have left? You just came down here to laugh at us. Now, what have I done? David says, can I even speak? He turned away to someone else, brought up the same matter, and the people answered him before. He reported to Saul, and Saul sent for David. Remember now, David is a younger man. He's the youngest of the brothers. They still see him as the runt. Remember, that's how he was referred to last week. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of the Philistines. Your servant will go up and fight. Wouldn't you have liked to have been a fly in Saul's mind when David, the harp player, shepherd boy, says, I'll take care of him. You're not able to go out against the Philistine and fight him. You're only a boy, and he's been fighting man since his youth. And then David proceeds to tell him a little more about it, about what he's done, how he took care of the animals that tried to get the sheep, what he's killed, a lion and a bear. 36, this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he's defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of the Philistines. Interesting way he describes Goliath there. Just been calling him Philistine, but he puts another word in there. What does he call him? Uncircumcised. because that was such a big thing in the Jewish tribe. All Jewish men were circumcised, and anyone who wasn't circumcised was not seen to be part of God's community. So he lets him know that how he thinks about him. It's not quite a snobbery, but it's how they refer to those people. Those people.
In my Bible it says pagan Philistine.
Well, if he wasn't a Jewish, he was a pagan.
Okay.
If he wasn't Jewish, he was some other religion that didn't matter. The pagan is a word they use for a lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Saul says to David, "Go and the Lord be with you."
Good luck, buddy.
See, you never do this funny part of the story. Here's the Philistine that even Saul's afraid of. And here comes David. He says, "I'll take care of him." Instead of Saul saying, "You're a kid, go home and take care of the sheep." He says, "Okay, go and the Lord be with you." Then the next part of this, we're not going to read all the way through it, is how Saul thinks David should fight. What does he do?
Give him his armor.
He loads him up with all this armor, like Saul would think a soldier should have. And I love David in, I think, verse 39. I can't go in these. I'm not used to them. So often people try to tell us how we have to do something the way they think we should do it. David didn't have all this armor when he killed the bear. He didn't have all this armor when he killed the lion. So he took them off. He took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag with his sling in his hand, and approached the Philistine. There's a whole hillside full of Israelite army people. There's a whole hillside of Philistine army people and Goliath. And who comes coming out, wandering out? A kid. A kid. 41, the Philistine with his shield bearer in front of him kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome. He despised him. Why is he despising him? I think he's despising him because he's cute. I've never seen a picture of Goliath, a rendition of Goliath, where he was a good-looking, big-hunking, 9-foot man. You know? He's always kind of portrayed as, ugly. Ugly. He also probably despised him because he's daring to come against him. Daring to come against him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come out at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." This is not just a battle between David and Goliath. It's a battle between Goliath's gods and Jehovah Yahweh. There's a bigger picture. Just like the things with the Methodists, it's not just all over LGBT. There's a bigger picture to it all. David said to the Philistine, verse 45, "You come against me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. Today I'll give the carcass of your, lost my place, and cut off your head. Today I'll give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the earth. And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." Don't you love how he just kind of barks it back at him? Na, 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 na. Na, 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 na. Not just Goliath, but the whole army's going to be defeated. And because of the geography now, remember they're on hills and there's a valley. Goliath has come down, David has come down. You know how noise echoes? So this is not just a little debate between David and Goliath. Both sides are hearing it. All those gathered here will know it's not by sword or by spear that the Lord saves, For the battle is the Lord's, and the Lord will give all of you into our hands. In the vernacular of the Hatfield McCoy, them there are fighting words. There's some fighting words going on. So the Philistine moved in closer to attack him. Can't you see? I'm going to take care of this kid. I'm going to get him. David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. What had happened to the Israelite soldiers before when Goliath came out? They ran the other way. David's running to him. Reaching into his bag, taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. Went boom. Now you can study all kinds of things about what kind of sling that was, and what kind of stone it was, and the velocity, and you can get into all kinds of checking out those sort of things. The bottom line is, David stood up to him, used the tools he had, and Goliath fell. Who do you think was probably the most, we haven't gotten to any more of this, but who was the most surprised in all that story, you think? I mean, besides Goliath.
Goliath, if he remembered.
Yeah, if he remembered. Saul, probably, because he was supposed to be the one in charge of everything. Of course, he could say, well, I sent him out there. I picked the right person. The Philistines, the rest of the army, because David had said, I'm going to cut your head off and all the rest of them. I wonder who did the quickest running now. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone without a sword in his hand, and struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. I got again a picture. If he had a javelin that long, can you imagine how big the sword was? I see David just pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, trying to get it out. He takes it out and struck down the Philistine and killed him. Ran and took the sword, drew it from the scabbard, killed him, and cut off his head with the sword. Now that sounds really gross and intense. But in war and battle at that time, that's what happened. Do you remember what happened to John the Baptist when he was preaching against the power and the authority at that time? He didn't just get killed. He had his head cut off too, so it's still continuing. There was something about making sure you were really dead, if that happened. I guess they'd never seen chickens run around after their heads had been chopped off. Okay, so now what's happening? Goliath's gone. He's not taunting them anymore. The Philistines saw that their hero was dead. They turned and ran too. The men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued them to the entrance of Gath, where Goliath was from. Their dead were strewn along the Sharon road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem and put the Philistine's weapons in his own tent. As Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, commander of the army, Abner, whose son is that young man? Now, I think that's even funny because David's been around and been with him all this time. What do you mean you're just figuring out who he is? Abner replied, as surely as you live, O king, I don't know. The king said, find out whose son this young man is. As soon as David returned from killing the Philistines, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine's head. Gross. Whose son are you, young man? David said, I am one of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem. Okay. When you read that story, or maybe heard it tonight for the first time all the way through, did anything jump out at you? Anything made you go, huh? Or oh, really?
We always, at least I had when I was a kid, even older, heard the story of the David taking it down with a slingshot. End of story. Done. But in the story that we read tonight, in my version of the Bible, I don't know if that's the right one or not, but it said they cut his head off, and that's what killed him. I never made that connection. But if you think a spotty kid, he had to have a way to bring down a giant. He had to have that way, so I never really made that connection between the two.
Yeah, he could have been dead when he hit.
He
Could have then had the head cut off, but could have just been stunned, which makes it an even grosser thing that he cut the head off. What I was thinking about when I was reading, you know, we talk about so many of these awful shooters that go into theaters and schools and things, how they have all the body armor on. One of the things that's often not covered is their face. So even then, with all of Goliath's stuff, he still had vulnerable, and there's kind of stretching a little bit. The vulnerability was his head. And I think it was more than just his, I started to say geographical, his physical head. Because he thought he couldn't be conquered. He thought he was bigger than all of it. One of the things I was studying, there's a Bible study group by John Maxwell, and he has different things about leaders, and he had a whole thing about how David defeated Goliath, and everyone won, except the Philistines. And one of the reasons was David had certain things working for him. For one thing, his perspective was different. How did the other people see Goliath? Unbeatable. Unbeatable. Scary beyond scary. David didn't see what everyone else saw. He saw a giant, but he also saw an opportunity. He saw an opportunity. His methods differed. Again, picture if we brought trips up here and got somebody in from the Panthers, California Panthers, Carolina Panthers, and put their uniform on Trips. Now Trips, you know, he's a young boy, but can you imagine how bowed down he'd be just with that stuff? But David knew there was something better to fight with. He used his proven weapons. Sometimes you know what works for you, whether it works for anybody else. Sometimes it's around pain relief. Sometimes it's around problem solving. Like other people want to fix computers and TVs, my solution is turn them off, leave them in the dark, and when they get tired of being in a timeout, they'll work. But that doesn't always work. He also had a different conviction. What was his conviction about Goliath? He knew he was big. He knew he was scary. What was his conviction?
Kind of the bigger they are, the harder they'll fall.
The bigger they are, the harder they'll fall. He also knew that David wasn't fighting for Saul. Sorry, train going through. For whom was David fighting?
God.
God. God of Israel. God of Israel. He wasn't fighting for Saul. And that happens in today's world. Who are we serving? Are we serving our boss? Are we serving our partner? Are we serving a denomination? Are we serving Jesus? Now, not that any of those have to be exclusive, but I believe if we're serving the Lord first, the other things come in. His vision differed. They saw a giant. David saw the person that needed to be defeated. And then lastly, his attitude was different. To David, there was not anything too big. There was not anything too difficult for God. How do you reckon he knew that?
He's been in the trenches. I mean, shepherding up against some pretty dangerous stuff. You know, and he'd already been through close combat with
A bear and a lion.
a lion.
What else?
Also, too, David had been anointed. The Spirit of God was in him, and because of that, he never had a minute of doubt.
If he understood what all that meant, or just knew in his, if you will, gut, his spiritual gut. I also wonder if he had, being the younger boy, maybe had more time to study, more time to know how God had worked in the past. For me, knowing what God has brought me through in the past gives me encouragement for what I'll be facing in the future. God can have a proven track record with us. I think it's interesting that he did this also without family support. He did it without family support. He did it really without any support. Everybody he talked to said, "Oh, that's a big bad character, you better get out of here." But he knew that his God was bigger. Now, It's great when we have people who support us and who encourage us. But sometimes you just have to go it with you and God. Just have to go it with you and God. It's interesting how the story fits in here with Saul finding out who David is. I had never noticed that part of the story. It always amazes me. Continue to find new stuff. I guess I just thought that Saul knew. In our world today, you would not have somebody going in and being that closely involved with the leader without somebody checking their background, you know. But his friend, remember, his friend knew that David was a good guy. He played good music. He was a good kid, looked nice, pretty. And that was enough to get him in. Why do you think Saul's finally checking his references? Why would he be afraid of him? He had stepped up where Saul would not. Saul may have begun to think, now wait a minute. I'm the old king. I've been doing this for a long time. God anointed me. Yeah, I messed up. But God anointed me, and now look who took care of the battle. Let's go on over to chapter 18 for a few minutes. It's interesting how the story gets set up, if you will. The story gets set up. Someone read 18, 1 to 4.
After David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return home to his family. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing, then gave it to David along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt.
Interesting story. Interesting story. David has gone now to the house of Saul. I wonder who's taking care of those sheep out in the desert. I bet it's those scaredy-cat older brothers. But anyhow, David is not going back home. He's staying there with Saul. And a new character comes into the story. And that character is Jonathan. Jonathan is the son of Saul. Therefore, it is thought that who would be the next king? Jonathan. That's how those things worked. Jonathan became one in spirit with David. In the Message it says, Jonathan was deeply impressed with David. An immediate bond was forged between them. He became totally committed to David. From that point on, he would be David's #1 advocate and friend. Saul received David into his own household, and that day no more to return to the home of his father. Jonathan, out of his deep love for David, made a covenant with him, formalized it with solemn gifts, his own royal robe, and weapons, armor, sword, and belt. So what's this all about? Well, everybody's just kind of like, a big deal. There's always been debate for hundreds and hundreds of years whether this was a homosexual relationship, whether it was a deep, close friendship. And I can tell you that as much as we'd like to read it as that, there's no absolute total proof of that. Sounds like it to me. Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It seems like it to me. But what you do see is a really intense bonding. Now, okay, so what's so unusual about that? Why would that be strange?
Jonathan was probably going to become king, and David was a servant.
So there was some class difference there, if you will. What else? Saul seems to be greatly impressed with David. Brought him into his household. Now, I have to tell you ahead of the story. I think he brought him to his household to keep a watch on him. I think there was some political maneuvering there. But if Jonathan was scheduled to be the next king, and Daddy's all hot and excited about this new warrior David, there could as easily have been some rivalry there. But I think here we see one of the first signs of the heart of David. Because I don't think David came into Saul's house this time bragging and proud. In fact, he came in carrying that guy's head's bad enough, but he didn't come in being bragging and proud about it. So there was some connection there. Also, Jonathan, being the son of the king, may not have had opportunity to have very many close friends. So now there's somebody right there. And it doesn't hurt my heart at all to think that they were two gay boys madly in love. It doesn't bother me at all. But I also know that it could have been a very close bond there. Verse 5, whatever Saul sent him to do, David did it so successfully that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the people and Saul's officers as well. Why are the people getting happy about this?
They have a hero.
They have a hero. They have a new, young leader. Saul's been being a little erratic. Remember, that's why they would call David in, because Saul would go off the deep end, have a little major, minor breakdown, think everybody was against him, because they were. Verse 6, when the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs and tambourines and lutes. Now that's fun. Mardi Gras, okay? But as they danced, they sang, Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands.
Yikes.
Only one day in battle.
Yeah. Now, this really is just like setting up some unhappiness and some rivalry, don't you think? Not only is it the guys like him, but oh my gosh, now the women like him too. Verse 8 says, Saul was very angry. This refrain galled him. They credited David with tens of thousands, but me only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. What do you think Saul's reaction should have been to David killing Goliath and leading to the slaughter of all those other people?
Should have been happy about it.
Yeah.
Should have been happy, should have been glad that, because if you read Old Testament history, the Philistines are always coming after the Israelites. I had an Old Testament professor, Dr. Delgado, and he always said, you know, those horrible Philistines coming after Israel. He should have been happy about it. But can you see how he's got his son bonding with David? He's got his military bonding with David. And he's got the women bonding with David. Who's left for Saul? Nobody. Now, probably there were, but in general, Saul, you know how you see things in big swaths? All Saul could see was how much, it's kind of funny, all Saul could see was how much everybody was loving David. And he keeps a jealous eye on David. In the message it said, this made Saul angry, very angry. He took it as a personal insult. He said, they'll credit David with 10,000, maybe with only thousands. Before you know it, they'll be giving him the kingdom. From that moment on, Saul kept his eye on David. Sometimes what we say brings things into being. Now, I wonder how differently the story might have gone if Saul had realized this was happening and tried to partner up with David instead of being jealous with him. What if he tried to work with him? Jealousy is never a good thing. Yeah, I think it's a part of a human reaction sometimes, but I've seen so many groups, families, and churches fall apart over jealousy. Whereas if you can bring people into company with one another, it works out so much better. Let's look at just one more little section. The next day, an evil spirit from God came forcibly upon Saul. He was prophesying in his house while David was playing the harp, as he usually did. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, I'll pin David to the wall. But David eluded him twice. Talk about crazy. He gets upset. David's called in to play for him. And I see Saul trying to turn him. You know how you do those butterflies? How you pin down the butterflies at a collection? Not just once, but twice. Now, one of my questions is, why did David stay there? You throw a spear at me, you're only going to do it once. I'm not going to be your target. Evil spirit. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was on David, but he had left Saul. How did Saul know that? Remember last week when we talked about how Samuel, he was upset at Saul because he got up worshiping other gods? And he told him, the Spirit of God was on you, now it's gone. Saul still had enough spiritual discernment, if you will, to see that David had that spirit. Now, whether he truly recognized that as God's Spirit, or he figured because things were going so good for David, the Spirit must have been on him. You can get into a big debate here of, does God's Spirit leave us? Does God walk out of our lives? Again, this is how it was interpreted at that time. Sometimes I think we think God has left us, but I'm telling you, God never leaves us. God never leaves us. You may want it, or you may want God to, but every once in a while there's still going to be that tap, 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 I'm still here. I'm still here. Let's stop with one more paragraph. Verse 12, Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with David, but had left Saul. So he sent David away from him and gave him command over 1,000 men, and David led the troops in their campaigns. In everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. When Saul saw how successful he was afraid of David. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he led them in their campaigns. Can you imagine the frustration of Saul? I'm going to get rid of this boy. I'm going to put him out here in battle. Maybe somebody will kill him. And instead, he just keeps doing better and better and better. And news traveled. And we're going to stop right there until a week after next, and we'll pick up with the rest of the story. What I hope you'll take out of here tonight is the fact that I believe one of the reasons that David could conquer Goliath was because he didn't see the giant, he saw the God. He didn't see the fear, he saw the faithfulness of God. He didn't see what everybody else was seeing, a big, scary, ugly giant. He saw somebody who was insulting his God. And he wasn't going to let that uncircumcised pagan Philistine talk bad about his God. So many of the battles in the Old Testament, if you read them, it may be this country and this country, but usually there's a God, a foreign God, saying that Jehovah Yahweh is not all that they think he is. And people come to defend their God. Thoughts, comments? Thing you never knew before? Thing you don't sure you believe?
I found it interesting that the Philistines ran. I understand Goliath was all big and bad, but over one death, they all took off. That's a lot to run.
Because the Philistines were a strong army.
Yeah.
They defeated a lot of other people. It's even thought that they had better weapons. They were better at metalworking than the Israelites. But, you know, when you put your whole faith and trust in your one warrior, and that guy, big as he was, got killed, yeah, they ran. They could run, but they couldn't hide because the Israelites found them. The Israelites got them, yeah.
I wonder if they had some superstitious belief that maybe David was magical or something.
Right.
Because that would be pretty amazing to see that.
Mhm.
Who could believe that?
And again, you know, thinking then was a lot different than ours in some ways, because they may have seen that there was something special about him. I mean, he hadn't been out there all these other days. 40 days Goliath had been out there taunting him. The kid had not shown up. He brings in some food for his family and ends up being the one go to battle. You never know who's going to be the David in a group. You never know if it might be you. Keep some rocks in your pocket. Any other prayer requests or praises as we finish? Loving God, we thank you that you, Yahweh, Jehovah God, are greater than any other force in our lives. When we trust you, when we give ourselves to you, we give the battle to you, then you are the victor. May not be the first day or the 35th day, but eventually the 40th day. We trust you in that. Send us here tonight, out tonight, being willing to be the David, and if we're not the David, to at least not be afraid of the Goliaths.